Is a Russian-funded NGO dictating foreign policy in the West? Is the same organization supporting murderers, gangsters, and fraudsters behind a billion-dollar theft exerting covert influence at the heart of Western power? Recent investigative reports indicate that Qatargate-style corruption was not an outlier affair. In a new case, an NGO with opaque funding is once again duping and likely corrupting EU officials. The organization in question is the Open Dialogue Foundation, whose purported mission statement is to defend human rights, the rule of law, and democracy. However, analysts have claimed their true intent is to drive a wedge between the West and post-Soviet nations. Founded in 2009 by a convicted fraudster and attempted murderer, at the head of the foundation stands Lyudmyla Kozlovska, a Russian citizen. Her family, which has been the ODF's primary source of funding, runs a thriving business conglomerate in Russian-annexed Crimea. Until December 2022, their interests included ZSS Mayak, a sanctioned naval defense contractor, which in 2020 received a 5-star review from the Russian Ministry of Defense. In September 2022, during Russia's war of aggression in Ukraine, Kozlovska's mother was awarded a government grant for construction in Sevastopol. The Kremlin is known for targeting the families of those who oppose the regime,
Putin's critics lies dead,
not doling out such lucrative contracts and awards to them. The family business has now spread to the US, where Kozlovska and her siblings set up at least 3 businesses and an ODF branch which is actively lobbying US officials, according to FARA filings. Since its inception, the ODF has sought to obscure the sources of its funding, with the head of the board, Kozlovska's husband Bartosz Kramek, stating that it's impossible to identify donors who put their money in charity boxes. Kramek has been arrested in Poland multiple times, including on counts of money laundering and destroying Poland's border fence, and has called for the government to be overthrown, not the usual remit of an NGO. Recently, the ODF have pivoted their attention to untraceable cryptocurrencies, and are now lobbying against proposed regulations in the EU and the US, perversely arguing that anti-money laundering regulations reinforce authoritarian regimes. The ODF's client list makes for interesting reading, chief among whom is a self-styled Kazakhstani oppositionist with a marginal following, Mukhtar Ablyazov, his family, and associates. Despite having judgments against him in multiple jurisdictions, including the US and the UK,
loans that the chairman made to himself,
from where he fled to avoid a prison sentence, having been found guilty of fraud on an epic scale, the ODF have lobbied on behalf of Ablyazov using the mantra of political persecution. Ablyazov, who has done business with multiple individuals sanctioned in the West, has judgments against him totaling over $4.8 billion in the US and British courts alone. Yet despite all this, a cabal of European politicians have repeatedly allied themselves with the ODF, even arranging for Ablyazov to visit the European Parliament and PACE. In 2022, this lobbying culminated in text plagiarized from an ODF report appearing in a European Parliament resolution. Qatargate may have raised awareness of corruption in Europe, but it would appear that this scandal may be just the tip of the iceberg. And who is the true beneficiary of the ODF's lobbying efforts?